And political parties battle to settle warring factions and put their houses in order less than 6 months to the 2023 elections. Hello and thanks for joining us on Standpoint. I am Precious Amayo. Now, with 18 days to the start of the political campaigns, all appears not well with some of the parties that will be going ahead head-to-head in the presidential election. The People's Democratic Party has been in turmoil since the conduct of its presidential primary that produced Atiku Abubakar as its flag bearer. Now, efforts to resolve the crisis rocking the party have not yielded any results. Rather, the infighting keeps getting messier. For the ruling or governing All Progressives Congress, not all stakeholders are in agreement with the choice of the party to go for same-faith ticket. For the African Democratic Congress, the situation is even worse. The crisis rocking the ADC has eventually led to the suspension of its presidential candidate, Dumebi Kachuku, and there seems to be no end in sight to the infighting in the party. Now, the situation is not different in the New Nigeria's People's Party that recently lost a power broker in the person of Ibrahim Shekarau due to internal conflict, and others. Political observers are concerned that this crisis might take away from the ability of the parties to focus on selling their manifestos to Nigerians, which will adversely affect the outcome of the polls. Now, joining me in the studio is a political scientist. He's a research associate professor, Dr. Kayode Esuola, and he's a research associate professor, of African politics. I want to get that correctly. African politics with the University of Lagos. And also we have joining us via Zoom a member of the All Progressives Congress, Ayo Oyalowo. We're also expecting a PDP chieftain to join in the conversation as we look at the internal conflict, if you call it that, within these political parties. But let me start with Dr. Esuola. I mean, when you look at this general situation in the political parties today, I mean, you've analyzed 4 of them. And that's not to say that, even the Labour Party is free. Even in Lagos, there is crisis within the Labour Party. And one of the, I think it's state chairman, who is also the candidate, saying that if they're not careful, it will affect the candidacy of Peter Obi. Now, so it looks like there seem to be crisis within most of the political parties. How do you characterize this situation?
There have always been crises. If you historicize party politics and party politics in Nigeria, especially from the most recent parts of the 60s, what you see is that early political parties were formed along ethnic and religious lines. I don't have to go into history, the Northern People's Congress, the Action Group, the NCNC. When they existed, they represented clans, they represented religions, they represented social orientations. Somehow, those parties managed to survive until the military took over. And then post-military in 1998-99, there was a transition into formation of national parties. So PDP emerged as a national party with a conglomeration of many of these actors who hitherto were ethnic and religious champions. That emergence continued for a while, for about 16 years, until the emergence of APC. The same thing came up, bringing together what many people have described as people of strange characters, strange identities together. And rather than just reduce it to that, it has been an attempt since 1999 to nationalize political party existence in Nigeria. And so, like any other thing that you form, you must have periods of experimentation. And those periods of experimentation must inevitably be, laden with crisis. That, in my view, explains the crisis we have in the political parties as at now. Some people would then say it is because we're just starting democracy. Our democracy is nascent. We're just developing. We cannot compare ourselves to those countries who have operated democracy for several years. It's also true, but the breakdown is what I've just given you. We are in a transition between, okay, local parties, ethnic parties, religious parties, and national parties. And that is why you have the crisis here and there. Other details exist, but fundamentally, that's the reason behind the crisis.
And it's not just in Nigeria where you see people move from one party to another. For example, the current Prime Minister of UK, Liz Truss, used to be a Liberal Democrat. Now she's a conservative, and she has said she will govern as a conservative. And that's someone who says, look, I am no longer a Liberal Democrat. I am now a conservative. I will govern that way. But here you find within these political parties, and this is why a lot of people, onlookers like me, tend to really wonder why within the party there is some sort of conflict, and then it becomes a situation of internal sabotage. So if you're running for office and I do not agree with you, I'm going to work against you. And one wonders what could be responsible for such a behavior when, if this is your political party, you should want to see that party win.
Three things we have put on the line here, why people move from one party to the other. The simple political behavioral reason behind that is that human beings will always have changed worldviews. They will always have changed orientations. Some 35 years ago, I had my thinking, my worldview about religion. Today, I have a new thinking, a new worldview about religion. Put that in politics. It explains why, generally speaking, people will be in political party A today and move to political party B tomorrow. So that example of Ukraine is taken care of by this explanation. However, politics is a local thing. It's not international, it's not general. So localizing it in the context of Nigeria, you have a different explanation. And that which bothered you is, perhaps it does bother you, is that why will you move out from a political party, or you have internal problem within that political party and you work against that person? The answer is simple. It is because the reason people go into politics in Nigeria is peculiar to the Nigerian socio-political system. And that reason, like you and I have seen in display in the society, is one, to get power for the sake of power. And power for its sake will then extend to power for the sake of power, for the sake of personal economic betterment, empowerment. Power to get power to deal with your opponent. And so it becomes what I call survivalist politicking within the parties. And where survival is at stake, desperation will come. And that explains, theoretically, what you see in the Nigerian situation. Perhaps in those other places you want to call sinner climes, perhaps they have national interest as the reason for going to politics. Perhaps not. But what we have seen in Nigeria to this extent is that people go into politics not for national reasons, but for the purpose of getting the power.
All right. So
what they want to use.
I wanted to establish that before we get into the issues within the political parties themselves. I wanted to also establish why all of this happened. And I want to bring in the APC member, Ayo Oyalowo, who is joining us via Zoom. We know that we've seen issues with most political parties going into the 2023 elections. It does seem as though there is some quiet in the APC, and some keen observers are saying that that's a smoke screen for what's actually happening within your party. And I just want to get your reaction on that.
Small screen for what exactly? That's funny. The fact that other people can't organize themselves does not mean the APC cannot organize itself. We have seen our presidential candidates have a meeting with the National Working Committee led by the National Chairman, and we have seen the amicable and cordiality, the amicable atmosphere, the cordiality with which they have treated each other. It shows that the APC in its entirety is showing clearly the way forward in terms of leadership as a political party. So there's no smoke screen anywhere because there's nothing to hide. The APC is working together as a decent political party, as a political party to show the way to others how things are done. We had a contest in the name of a primaries, and then the primaries are over. So for us, everybody has fallen in line so that we all work together to achieve a common goal and a common objective, which is to work for the candidates and every other candidate for the 2023 election. So we don't have any smoke screen anywhere. What we have clearly is a party that is matured, that is decent, and that is disciplined enough to face reality and do what should be done after a primaries have been held and a winner emerged. So we don't have any issue and we are not hiding anything. What you see is what you get with the APC.
I just want you to say clearly, because you almost sound as though you're saying categorically that everyone within your party has lined up behind your presidential candidate.
I said that immediately, yes. As soon as the contest was done and it's done with, there is no any other agenda than for everyone to work together and ensure we win the primaries. So yes, everybody within the APC is lining up right behind our candidate and the national chairman so that we can work together and ensure that the general elections are won by the party. So we don't have any issue with hiding nothing. We have no issue. There are no infighting. Everything is being handled maturely with political correctness, the way it should be done.
And what about calls earlier that the national chairman, Abdullahi Adamu, should resign? Are you saying that those calls were not valid calls within your party, or that they were mischief makers?
We don't know who are the people making those calls. The call did not emerge from any serious member of the party, neither is it coming from the candidate. So, you see, the truth is we like to infer when there's really nothing to infer. We like to draw necessary inference. The fact that other parties are having problems, everybody just assumes we too should have a problem, but we don't have any problem. So how do people want to manufacture problem for us? The party is in sync with each other. Everybody is working together. So we have no issue. If others have issue, they should deal with it however they wish. We don't have any problem as a party.
All right, let me get Dr. Esuola to react to this. Ayo has said categorically APC doesn't have an issue. At some point, we were hearing reports about calls for the national chairman to be removed, especially because of the role he played during the presidential primaries. But he said that that call is not being made by serious members of the party, whether they are members or not, but they are not serious. And I just want to get your thoughts.
Yeah, maybe I should start by congratulating APC for having a very good quiet, as you describe it, and for not appearing to the public as having serious problem. Nobody's going to manufacture problems for them. The way I would put it is that perhaps APC has been more mature in resolving the internal crisis. To come out and say this is a party without internal crisis where everybody queues behind one person is to say politics is not what it is. Politics is a game of interest. And interest means what is there for me. Okay? There must essentially be agitations and counter-agitations within the party. So maybe, one, by virtue of better public relations management, or two, by virtue of actions of the leadership of the party, maybe, I'm not a politician, there's no way I can know, I'm only doing analysis, maybe APC has been able to manage all those inevitable internal conflicts much better than the other parties whose cases are in town. So that being said, we can only congratulate the party as of now.
Isn't it too early to be congratulating the party?
That's what I wanted to add. And then watch out that this is not the time to judge. Some 2 months, 3 months before elections, if we historicize party politics in Nigeria, wonders happen. Cross-carpetings happen. Many people will come out and do many things that will change the political permutation. So, if the APC is lucky so far not to have it, then it should have the caution not to push its luck too far by watching those internal, contradictions, by knowing that they are there, and of course, continue to strategize to ensure that they don't manifest into crisis. No party runs as smooth as my good brother here has portrayed it.
All right, let me take this back to Ayo. You've talked about the issues around the national chairman, and to an extent, I think that Nigerians have been watching in terms of the relationship going forward between the national chairman and the presidential candidate. We've seen them make courtesy visits to states together. And it looks like they have resolved that difference, their differences, especially prior to the presidential primaries. But one cannot say the same thing for the presidential aspirants, because most of them have been really quiet going into the campaign season. We've not heard anything from them. One would have imagined that by now they will be acting as surrogates speaking on behalf of the presidential candidate. None of them have spoken. We also got report that there was a meeting that was called, I think, by the presidential candidate and to the former presidential aspirant, and none of them showed up for that meeting. I want you to clarify exactly what's going on and if such a meeting was actually called.
Okay, thank you. I forgot your name, but it seems you really want to see that there is an issue in the APC, because the way you are hammering on issue, it's funny. We know that there is no campaign yet until September 28th. So why should anybody be campaigning when the official umpire, that is INEC, has not said you can go on and campaign? So the fact that aspirants are not campaigning is not an issue. You remember, I think it was just yesterday or 2 days ago, the governor of Kogi State, one of the leading aspirants then, made a few very cognizant statements talking about the fact that he will support the candidate. And you remember he also donated his campaign office to the candidate of the APC. So also a few other aspirants. The fact that they are not jumping around does not mean they are not in sync with the candidate. So please, let's stop trying to look for problem when there is no problem. We don't have any problem, like I said earlier. That's number one. Then number two, the meeting you talked about, we all of us had it in the press. Till now, we still don't know where that meeting is coming from. I am sure you know that as soon as the contest was over, the candidate of the APC, Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, met with every one of the aspirants. I'm sure you remember that. And the things that were discussed are not for the television camera. But they are doing what they need to do. If there is crisis or if there are crises, you will know. These things cannot be hidden. And if one or two people are not happy, you will always, like the gentleman in the studio said, it's a game of interest. If people feel their interests are not being taken care of, probably they will have issues. But that does not necessarily mean that we must have a crisis the way party A and B, I don't want to call any party, but we don't have to have a similar crisis like they're having. Because whatever crisis they have, in fact, a particular party had even gone ahead to suspend his presidential candidate. So those are issues. We don't have any of those kind of issues. While the other ones, they are fighting for who will step down, whether the chairman or the board, they are having all manner of crises. We don't have any of such things. And as for the aspirants being on board, you will see when the campaign council people in the council, when the names are released, and you will see when the campaign officially kicks off. You will know who is on board and who is not. So let's not try to preempt any crisis when there is none, actually.
So it is not my job to manufacture issues within party. If there are reports, we give people the platform to come and clarify those issues, and that's exactly what we're asking you to do today.
And I have told you categorically
clarify,
that...
and you are doing exactly that, clarifying those issues. Let me come back to you, Dr. Esuola, just to react to what he has said, in terms of, because unlike what we're seeing in the PDP, where Wike is quite vocal about issues in his party, every other day we hear something from Wike, and he says that there have been agreements, but that those agreements have not been followed through. But when you also look at the flip side to the APC, we've not really had that kind of drama, as it were, in the APC. Is the silence a good thing for PDP? And does it, APC rather, and does it show that, look, all the issues around the primaries have been put behind, and they're moving into the campaign as a united force compared to what we're seeing in the PDP?
Well, you cannot know a show's mother more than a show. You are not a politician. You're a journalist. I am not a politician. I'm a journalist. The man at the center of it has said that the party has no crisis whatsoever, fallout of the primaries. We choose to believe him because he is the expert from that opinion. I mean, Yorubas have a proverb. They say, "Talara balara uru." What else can the other person say? I'm sorry that interprets that if you, as the owner of your body, say you have no pain, the third person or third party cannot say that you have pain. Okay? That being said, I think I implied it in what I said before, that there must be a sound of warning to APC that the silence does not appear quite natural. And I think that what is happening in PDP gives concerns to members of the party who love the party. But it is better it happens now, and from a very vocal person like Wike, and get addressed early enough before the deadlines, than for people to be silent now, and then only 1 month or 2 months before election, they get into crisis. Again, there's no way we can know if something is going on with it, especially when the man says there's nothing going on. We cannot manufacture and impose upon them. But analytically speaking, I put it on the table that the silence in APC does not appear politically natural. Something must be going on. And I said, objectively, whether there's good public relations on the part of the party, whether the leaders of the party have, very skillful internal crisis management, whether those who are aggrieved are waiting for the right time to manifest, we cannot know. These are speculations, but the man said there's no crisis. But if there will be crisis, analytically speaking, it's always better for the crisis to come early and get agitated about and get resolved than crisis coming at the latter part when campaigns are very close, when elections are very close. We can only wish APC the best.
All right, so I'm sure we can say the same for the PDP. Let's bring in Kash Ononuju, who is also joining us via Zoom. Kash, it does seem as though he's a PDP chieftain. It does seem as though the issues within your party seem to be getting, I don't want to use the word worse, but that's what it seems like. We're seeing now that the NEC, which is a National Executive Committee of your party, has now passed a vote of confidence on the national chairman, and Wike says that's not acceptable, that it has to go to balance and for balance and equity within your party. I just wanted to speak on that.
Thanks for asking that question. There was no vote of confidence. Vote of confidence occurs when you do accreditation and then you have NEC members vote. Not when you come in with all the BAs, security men, cameramen, and they are still there. Confidence. And before you knew it, everybody say, yeah. That's not how it's done. Vote of confidence is done in a NEC meeting after accreditation. Newsmen have left. Dignitaries to the hall have left the hall. That's when you conduct a vote of confidence. So the fact that they have rushed to try to do this really doesn't hold water. We are simply asking to be included. Since this is a representative democracy, we ask that positions be so done that those that we represent will see that those who represent them are included in the scheme of things. I agree. Most of us in the South have been outplayed by our friends and brothers from the North. But now, seeing that the Northerners have an agenda, what we must do is cut our losses and then come together and see how we can salvage it. A lot of people today in Nigerian politics are simply playing a game of gaining personal advantage, forgetting that it is a representative democracy where you represent the interests of the populations in the North South who vote for you. How would we now be able to go back to those who we claim to represent to say, vote for this party, when they themselves can see that this party have underhands that undermines the interests of them as they send us forth to represent them? It's a very difficult issue. And you see,
Mr. Onoju, I just want to, because I want to jump in here because you've been saying we just want to be included. You've also talked about the northern. You used the word the northern caucus. It almost sounds as though your party has now been split into northern and southern caucus. Is that what it is now?
It has always been that way. Nigeria runs a representative democracy. It is not a democracy done by a band of men interested in state capture. No, it is a representative democracy. That is why even when we do compose executives, it's representative of the different sections and geographies of the country.
Thanks for staying with us on Standpoint. We've been talking about the internal wranglings in political parties. If you have been following Standpoint, last week we did talk about the NNPP. Today we're focusing on the APC and the PDP. But the APC says everything is fine in the party, and that's fine. But we're looking at the PDP. Just before that break, we had Kayode Esuola, who was speaking as to he mentioned the issues around caucus within the party, and there's the Southern Caucus and the Northern Caucus. And I just want you to finish that thought.
Okay. On the issue of the caucus, the Southern Caucus insists that since the Northern Caucus have gone ahead to seize the presidential ticket, that we will want also to be included in the executive making room of the party. We want to have the chairmanship for the party. I think that is not too much for anybody to demand. I believe that being a representative democracy, our people will want us to be seen, to be representing them through this power sharing. If we don't get shared into the power, we will not be comfortable. We will not be very assertive when we campaign to our people to please support our party.
So before I bring in Dr. Esuola to respond to some of the things you've said, I just want, because you talked about the Southern Caucus and the Southern Caucus wanted to be represented, but let's also not forget that the National Executive Committee that made that decision of passing a vote of confidence on the national chairman also has Southerners in that committee. And then you have someone, your vice presidential candidate is from the South. So when you say inclusion and representation, one wonders, you almost sound as though everyone member of the PDP in the South are saying the same thing, but it doesn't seem that way.
Well, let me help you for what you say. There are Southerners that don't do the work. Southerners who simply have agreed to be compromised, and then they work in the South as saboteurs because themselves. But that is not representational. We are representing a geography. We represent a people. And so when somebody goes privately behind to have a private deal because he's a southerner, and then you want to now use him, and all you can do is simply rub some stew on his lips and say that he's got. Nigeria operates a representative democracy. So if it is possible that Southerners could be used to sabotage the collective discussions and interests of the South, those Southerners are on their own. They represent themselves. If a man, because of stomach infrastructure, will agree to go against the collective interests of his people and go to negotiate something privately for himself, he does not represent the South. We are now speaking as members of the Southern Caucus. That is very, very simple. The days of those tricks are gone. That's why we agree we were at play. But now that we have woken up, we are simply trying to do the right thing. And if you see, most of our governors also played politics of me, me, me. Now that they have seen that doesn't work, that's why they are now coming in to the caucus. When you play alone and you get a play more when you go as a group. When you go as a group, you go far. When you go alone, as the adage says, you go fast. But sometimes going fast could mean you running into a ditch. We have seen that. We agree. The Northern Caucus outplayed us, tricked us, went behind us at night to get some Southerners compromise who now came back to act for themselves. It is not for the interest of the South.
All right. Let me put you on hold, Mr. Onojo, and bring in Dr. Esuola in here to just analyze some of the things you've said. He's talked about the Northern Caucus and the Southern Caucus within the party, and then how some members, some Southerners have been compromised. I'm not sure they will say they have been compromised, but I want you to respond to some of the things he said.
Well, I can see the speaker for PDP is really agitated, and that's understandable in the context of what you call representative democracy. That's the nomenclature that you all know. And so it is not unexpected that he is this agitated for the reasons of the crisis in the PDP. However, to use the word, what did they use for the Southern Caucus who went behind to do?
They've been compromised.
Yeah, to use the word compromise may not actually be correct because you must remember that it is politics. And politics is nothing but a game of games, a game of interest, you know. The man speaking has one vote. Perhaps he has the capacity to convince 1,000 others to vote. Those who have gone to do the compromise game also have, each of them has one vote, perhaps also the capacity to convince 1,000 more to be able to vote. So when you agitate, like Wike is agitating, it is not the logicality of the agitation that is the politics. It is the power of interest behind the agitation that delivers the goal at the end of the day. Wike, no doubt, is a fantastic orator. I mean, permits that use of word when he talks in the public, somehow people are carried along. Okay? But that's what we call symposium heroes, microphone revolutionaries. When you keep talking to people and they admire your talk and they applaud you, what are you doing to ensure that they will not go behind you and do something against the talk that you have been talking? So those who compromised, in quote, must have been listening to the logicality of Wike's agitation and the logicality of my brother's agitation here. But the political is that ultimately, at the end of the day, people will not go for what is logical. People will not go for what is political. People will go for what is there for me. And you remember at the outset of this interview, I told you that here in Africa, especially in Nigeria, we do politics because of what is there for me. Not what is there for my political party, not what is there for the nation.
If I may quickly...
Just to add, I am aware that apart from Wike, who is very loud, there are several other key actors in the PDP who have been playing underground games to resolve this crisis. One of them is the governor of Bayelsa, Doye Duri. He hardly talks, but he moves, okay, from point to point to ensure that these crises are resolved. Somehow, I wish, again, PDP the best in resolving this crisis. I respect the need to have internal democracy, but the players must know that it's not the logicality, the nomenclature, but the
I just want to
interest.
get your thought on this, and I know that neither you nor I are politicians, but
No, I'm not.
when you look at the fact that on one hand, there was a reconciliatory meeting, or several reconciliatory meetings have been held. The last one was held in London. And according to Wike, there were promises made. He wanted the national chairman to be removed, and it looked like that was going to happen. He said the presidential candidate had come to his house to say that that was going to be done. It was even his suggestion that that should be done. And then on the other hand, while that reconciliatory meeting is going on, the National Executive Committee is saying, well, this is the man for the job. I was sticking with him through the elections. So doesn't that sort of contradict what the reconciliatory meeting is meant to achieve?
If I were to advise Wike as a technocrat, not as a politician, okay, as a very objective political analyst, I will say that it is not political for him to, as a person, demands that the national chairman resigns or be removed. I mean, that appears too powerful coming from one individual. Look, Wike is a member of the party.
But it doesn't seem as though it is now one individual. We just heard Kash Onanuju saying the Southern Caucus of the party now wants the chairman to be removed for equity.
Okay, two. Maybe 2,000 others. But there could be 5,000 others who will look at it in terms of other dimensions of interest. In politics, compromise is the game. Yes, this has been done. Yes, it is injustice. But that's why I'm saying if I were to advise Wike as a technocrat, if the interest of the party is what matters, if winning the election in 2023 is what matters, no party to the crisis must insist. No, that's not the way politics is played. Parties to the politics must present their views, ventilate their anger, project their agitations, and then parties must also compromise. Okay, if we can't take it that way, let's do it that way. And I think the leadership of PTP has made that attempt, by rearranging the situation, by putting BOT members, as it were. If it is not acceptable, you cannot force it on Wike. But I say no individual has the power to say one person must resign. You are not the political party. You are just a member. It's not done that way. I mean, oratory sometimes does not represent political realities on ground. Because when the chips are down, people, behaviorally speaking, that's the political behavior of man. When the chips are down, people will follow not the oratory of Wike, not the logicality of the position of those who are talking about fairness and equity. They will follow what is there for me. And I think the party leaders maybe, please project that word, I'm not assertive, may be banking on that strategy ultimately. That's my view.
All right. And I will get Kash to respond to some of the things you've said and then, speak to him more. But I want to bring in Ayo Oyalowo, who is of the APC. We know that you have constituted your campaign council, but not with every position filled. We've seen that of the I think the chairman of that council has been filled, and some of the spokesperson as well. As we go into the campaign season, how soon do we expect that those positions will be filled? And then can you give us any insider information as to who might fill those positions?
Well, the campaign council from the presidential candidates side has been submitted to the national chairman during the meeting the candidate had with the national chairman and the national working committee 2 days ago. So the rest is now in the hands of the party machinery, and hopefully within the next coming days, probably a week, or I'm sure before INEC gives the final go ahead for parties to start campaigning publicly, I'm sure you will know the names of who is in the campaign council. But I can assure you, like the candidate said, everybody can be on, but there will be a lot of representative. And I am also aware that leaders within the party have been asked to submit names of people from their own side so that every interest will be represented within the campaign council. That is ongoing as I speak with you. That has been done. So I'm very much aware of that because some of the leaders that I have spoken with or that I'm in contact with have made that known to me. So the names and who will be in the council is not an issue for now. The national chairman has the final say according to the candidate. He has graciously given that right to the national working committee to conclude on the names of people that will be brought into the campaign council. So that will be done in the next couple of days before INEC officially says you can start campaigning officially.
And it's interesting you mentioned representation, because I was going to ask a question on that, because representation, I mean, if you've been listening to the conversation, even Dr. Esuola, if you've been listening to the conversation, you will know that representation is very key in this campaign. It's perhaps one of the issues that the PDP is having right now. If you heard Kash speaking earlier, that same issue has also trailed the APC at the beginning, even though it looks like that is now water under the bridge. But speak to us more on how representative that representation of that council is.
I just told you that every leader has been given the opportunity to submit names from their side, and they have done that. And the National Working Committee of the party will conclude on that assignment, I am sure, within this coming week, so that by the upper week, the list should be made public. So we, like I said, we are ahead of others. The necessary shoulder rubbing and heart-to-heart discussions have been had and have been held. Everybody who needs to be spoken with or spoken to has been, and they have been spoken with. So every member of the party will have a sense of belonging when the list is finally out, because like I told you earlier on, leaders within the party are submitting names of people from their own side so that they will be represented. And like I said, it will be completely representative, which means it will represent gender, it will represent age, it will represent everybody, male, female, people living with disability, young people, professionals. So there will be a very good representative within the campaign council so that there will be a balance in the constitution of the council from the APC.
And Ayo, just to talk about balance, because you mentioned balance, what is your strategy? I know you can't reveal everything to us, because I mean, if you tell us what your strategy is, then what's the point of having a strategy in the first place? But I want you to talk to us about your strategy for campaigning around the country. I can't remember who it was. I think it was one of the, I know he's from Enugu State. I'm trying to remember who that was speaking as to issues around the Southeast and the disposition of the campaign council towards the Southeast, and how whether we're going to see that campaigning and just carrying along the Southeast in your campaigns. And I want you to speak to that and what you plan to do.
Well, the strategy is simple. Everybody is a stakeholder. Did you listen to the governor of Ebonyi yesterday? Also, our leader from Abia State former governor and now Senator Ojus Okalu. All these men from the Southeast have made their voices known, and they have spoken clearly that the Southeast will be represented because they represent the interest of the APC in the Southeast. So there is no problem in terms of strategy. And also, strategy also will include, but not limited to, ensuring that each region have people of I don't want to use the word timber and caliber, but you understand what I'm saying. Such kind of people, so that the campaign will have like a leaders from those areas who will galvanize the grassroots in each region. So we are putting that in place so that every region is also represented adequately. Nobody is left out. Nobody is forgotten. Southeast, southwest, south, north central, northeast, and northwest. So the entire Nigeria will be represented. Then all the faith will be represented. The gender will be represented. People living with disability will be represented. It's a whole campaign that carries everybody along. Even children are carried along in the campaign.
All right, so I'm refraining from asking you certain questions because I know we're not in the campaign season yet, but when we're in that season, I will definitely bring you back to speak on those issues. But I just want, before we get to Catch, just in a few minutes respond to what Ayo has said in terms of representation of the campaign council, and then his position towards the Southeast and how important that would be for the APC before we get to PDP.
Yeah, on the platform of analysis, it's important that every political party gives people sense of representation, sense of inclusiveness, sense of recognition. And in doing so, it must cut across class, stratification, geopolitics, ethnicity, religion, and the rest. I am excited that APC spokesman here claims that it's been done, but because it's still in the embryo until it manifests.
We would find out this week. So
so until it manifests and we analyze, we may not be able to speak into that because it's still in the pipeline, it's in the embryo. But it's a good thing to do. You know, it's a good thing to do. Unfortunately, I historicize elections in Nigeria. And I insist, okay, that what wins election ultimately has never been fairness, has never been representation, has never been logic. History. I mean, is it the election of Shagari against Awolowo? Is it the election of Olufalaye, renowned economic versus Obasanjo and the rest at that time? Is it even 2015 elections, as we have come to see in Nigeria? If we historicize, it's not about representation. What is, not what should be, what is de facto now, is that we have operated a situation in which the political elites manufacture candidates and present to the people. However, maybe this is likely to change in 2003 because of the change in the election transmission method, which gives the hope that votes will now count. If that is anything to go by, it is very correct and necessary for all political parties to ensure inclusiveness, representation, balancing in what they are doing. Because if votes count, then the manipulations of yesteryears will never work again.
Let me bring in Kash, because the PDP seems to be having more issues than any other political party, as it were, that we can see.
The PDP man did not deny.
He did not. He accepted, and he says there are issues. Kash, we know that you are asking for the national balance and equity, rather. And the BOT chairman has now resigned, making way for Adolphus Wabara to become the acting BOT chairman. And one would have thought that that's also balanced. We also understand that even though there are claims and counterclaims as to Tambuwal also stepping down as the chairman of the PDP Governors Forum. So wouldn't that be equity in itself?
Well, we are thinking about executive positions, decision-making positions. The national chairmanship and the presidential candidacy, these are decision-making positions. The position of Tambuwal in Governors Forum, that's advisory. That of BOT is advisory. We, the members of the Southern Caucus, are asking to be negotiated into the party. Look, it's an issue of equity. And that's why we are saying this. Don't forget, this didn't start now. It started long before now and was the primary reason for some members of the party like Peter to be leaving the party. We are suspecting that we might see a continuation of the employment of nepotism in running issues, as we've seen in President Buhari's government. We are afraid and do not want that affliction to be with us in everywhere. Now we've seen it for the past 7 years. We don't want it. If those members who left APC and came back to PDP came with that mindset, there's nothing wrong with us being alarmed and starting to scream from now on. So we'll have done that. It's not enough to do the old politics of for myself, what is there for me, which has been the historical way where individuals do not remember the societies and communities that they are supposed to represent and only think about themselves. You should agree that something is changing in the country. We have seen the youths now jump into politics, seizing the streets. So a lot of changes are taking place in our country. And part of that is people now beginning to say, no, let it not be continuously politics
and just
for
because
me,
I would have appreciated your speaking as to the change in the country, but just because of time, aren't you also worried about
just a minute in the country? Let's say I'm a Nigerian.
Mr. Kayode, I have a few minutes left, and I just want to ask you about this.
And I believe those changes are inevitable and they are real.
All right, Mr.
That is what we are talking about. Don't pretend. Don't think it doesn't matter. It matters. The changes on the streets are real.
And I was going to ask you more questions, but I'm sorry, I can't do that anymore because you've taken up the time I was going to do that with. But we'll continue to monitor the issues within your party and then bring you on as much as we can to speak on them because you're quite agitated about that. Dr. Esuola, just in a minute, because we do have to go, just respond to what he said and how concerned should the PDP be if these issues are not resolved before the campaign?
The candidate advice a political scientist will give to the PDP is to very quickly act smart and timelessly in resolving this crisis. The party has a big opportunity of winning an election because of the feelings of the temperament of the Nigerian people about what is happening in Nigeria now. Whichever party is in power now does not appear to have impressed Nigerians too much. That provides a golden opportunity for PDP. If only the party will come out, act, and resolve the crisis early enough, then it will be good for them in terms of election winning.
We've been speaking on the internal wranglings within political parties in the country ahead the 2023 elections and just ahead the campaigns, which will begin on September the 28th. We've been speaking with Dr. Kayode Esuola. He's a lecturer with the University of Lagos, and he lectures on African politics. He joined us in the studio. We also spoke with a member of the All Progressives Congress, Ayo Oyalowo, and the PDP chieftain, Kayode Esuola. Thank you, gentlemen, for talking to us.
Thank you.